Arm's Length, Episode 2. I knew I'd find you here. A smiling Sandra walked into her office, carrying a garment bag. Gabrielle looked up from her laptop and smiled. She was a welcome distraction as she had spent the best part of the day reviewing designs and speaking to suppliers. Work on the new collection had started. Soon, things would get rather hectic and she would bury herself in work and become difficult to reach. Well, spill, what did he say? Where is he taking you to? Sandra, you do realize that this is not going to go anywhere, right? It isn't a real date that will lead to a real relationship. For some reason, I feel the need to remind you of this as you seem to be getting too excited. But that is the beauty of life. Things don't always start all lovey dovey. Sometimes they creep up on you when you least expect them, and then, boom, Sandra said. Gabrielle frowned. It felt like Sandra wanted her relationship with Paul not to work out and was pushing her in any other direction but his. Sandra, you told me the other day that you have nothing against Paul. Is that true? You wore me down and I accepted getting into the whole dating scene. But now, suddenly, it feels like my choice is no longer good enough. That you would prefer someone with such a playboy reputation. Knowing me like you do is something I find quite baffling. I don't have any reason not to like Paul, Sandra said. He's been quite nice to me, dropping me off at home a few times when it was getting rather late. But I have to admit that Alexander Jacobs is just it for me. He's charming, cheeky, witty, handsome, fit, and not that it matters, very wealthy. And even if you will never admit it out loud, you must have noticed his dimples, those eyes, and that 2-day-old beard, because I know that there's nothing wrong with your eyesight. It just feels like one of those romantic comedies with a happy ending, and I so want a happy ending for you. One of us should get one. Both girls were silent for a moment, lost in their thoughts. Sandra wiped away a tear, and Gabrielle went to hug her. 2 years earlier, they had been planning Sandra's wedding, and 10 days prior to the big day, her fiancé, Tom, had been hit by a drunk driver and had died on the spot. The couple had been in London and Gabrielle in Nigeria, and she had rushed to her friend's side, but she was inconsolable. A few months later, Sandra quit her job and moved to Lagos, unable to go on living in London with the constant memories of Tom. It had taken a while to get her life together. She got an apartment and a job in a reputable firm. But sometimes Gabrielle caught a look of great sadness in her eyes. So, she let her tease her and daydream about the perfect couple she assumed Alexander Jacobs and herself would make. If it momentarily brought back the sparkle she had once seen, then it was totally worth it. To answer your question, I have no idea where he's taking me. He gave me no clue and said I could dress how I wanted as long as I was comfortable. So, what's in the bag? Gabrielle asked with trepidation. I thought I could bring you something to make Alex momentarily lose his ability to articulate words or construct meaningful sentences. I don't trust that you will go out of your way to create a lasting impression. And we have to replace the memory of your first meeting in Alex's mind. What's wrong with the way I dress? Nothing for a day in court. But that's not where you're heading. We only have 5 dates to make the man unable to focus on any other female that isn't his mother or you. Worry not. I respected your no cleavage, no revealing rule. Voila. Gabrielle held her breath, expecting the worst, but was pleasantly surprised as the garment bag contained black slacks and a red wraparound blouse that actually fit when she changed into the garments. I'm impressed. This is both elegant and casual for wherever I'm going to be taken to. It feels like you finally, after all these years, you understand me. I have good taste, Sandra said. Now, Let's do your makeup. Subtle, as I know you like it, but noticeable. The truth is that you don't need to enhance much. Half an hour later, Gabrielle set out to the mysterious location. Alex had texted her the address after she refused his offer of being picked up. She had accepted that they were to see each other 5 times, and so would do her best to have a good time and not antagonize him. But she would not spend more time than necessary in his company. The chauffeur slowed down into a car park belonging to a restaurant. It seemed the plan was for them to have dinner. She would have preferred a first date in which they did not have to talk much, so as to avoid awkward silences. But if dinner was what he wanted, she would do that and make the best of the situation as she searched her mind for possible conversation topics that they would both be interested in. The car stopped in front of the restaurant doors and she got out. There were 4 other couples standing outside the closed doors, and she spotted Alex at some distance talking on the phone. She waved to him so he knew she was there and looked around her. From the looks she was getting, she understood that her companion had been recognized as people were noticing them and talking. She smiled and shook her head, hoping the news of his new conquest would not appear on any of the celebrity gossip sites. A moment later, he joined her. Hi. Sorry, that was work. You look stunning, by the way, if I'm allowed to pay you a compliment. She made a small bow in acknowledgement and smiled. I think we got here too early. The place isn't open yet. No, we are right in time. No sooner had he uttered those words than the doors were opened and they were ushered in by a man in a chef's uniform. There was a general feeling of excitement generated by the other couples who seemed to have more information than she did. So Gabrielle thought that the restaurant probably had a very good reputation. She expected to be led to the typical dining room, but instead, they walked past it, down a corridor, and into a kitchen. There they were greeted by 3 men in white uniforms. Gabrielle recognized one of them from a very popular cooking show she normally followed on TV. It was one of the things she loved doing, watching cooking competitions. Perhaps this was his restaurant and he was giving them a tour. Contestants, please go to your workstations. She looked around her in confusion, noticing for the first time that the layout with the various workstations was very similar to that of a culinary competition. She looked at Alex, who was grinning at her. I wanted to avoid the usual stiff first date, he whispered. Ah, she mouthed in reply. This was extremely unexpected, but it promised to be fun. She hoped at least one of them knew how to cook, or their team was done for. Amateur cooks, you have an hour to replicate my signature dish. The recipe is right in front of you, and you have 3 minutes to go into the pantry and get your ingredients. After that, you won't be able to go back. The winners will get a gift voucher for dinner for 2 at my restaurant in the VIP lounge. Put on your chef's jackets and get ready. Oh, see? I'm going to save you from feeding me on at least one date. We'll probably get to eat what we cook, she said to Alex as she tied up her hair in a ponytail and faced the direction of the pantry. He observed her in amusement. I think we should follow a plan, she went on. Let's divide and conquer. 3 minutes go by very quickly. You just concentrate on getting the basics, and I'll get the other things on the list. She didn't bother waiting for his reply. As the start-off was given and grabbing a basket, she rushed off with only one thing on her mind: winning. That was fun, and second place wasn't bad. How did you get your jacket so dirty? Alex asked. Why is yours spotless? The second place was all thanks to you. Your job was to get the basics and you forgot the salt. Good thing I got seasoning cubes and managed to salvage the situation, she replied, raising an eyebrow and shaking her head as they walked towards the car park and said goodbye to the other competitors. Would you like to go for a drink? He asked. Thanks, but I have a meeting first thing tomorrow morning and I want to make it an early night. But if you're free tomorrow, I could pick our activity? Sure. Text me the instructions and I'll be there, Alex replied as she smiled and walked in the direction of a waiting car, thereby ending their first outing. 2 dates and you're still alive, Sandra teased her friend 2 days later. Yes, I am. They haven't been terrible. Yesterday we went to a mystery escape room and we finished in 57 minutes. I thought we wouldn't be able to decipher all the clues before the allotted time, but we did. I've wanted to go to one of those for a while. And because we won, we weren't handed the donkey ears for the after photograph. She showed Sandra the pictures in which they were wearing detective caps, and she was proudly holding a magnifying glass. Hmm, he seems to be standing closer than necessary to you. He's bridging your arm's length role. Just saying, in case you hadn't noticed. I know. The photographer kept making signs for us to shut in the space. But don't get any ideas. I know you. I am nervous, Gabrielle said, abruptly changing the subject. I know, Sandra replied, the mood suddenly going somber. Will he keep his promise? It's been 27 years. It just feels like the last chance I have. This is the reason why I moved back here, and I've waited 3 years. It feels like the answer is almost within my grasp, and I am holding my breath, afraid that it will once again elude me. Both friends remained silent, not knowing what to say, but hopeful that the 5 dates would yield the desired results. So, what's the plan for today? Unamdi asked as he drove the golf cart back to the club where they were meeting the others for a drink. Just an old fashioned dinner date. Being the third, I thought we could talk without the distraction of an activity. What's your opinion of her now? I honestly have no idea what goes through her mind. It's like she's playing a part and waiting for the final act. I find her intriguing. She has a way of looking directly at me, but I can't decipher what she's thinking. Alex, finding a woman intriguing? That is new, Namdi teased. I have a feeling that after the fifth date, I won't see her again. Strangely, I don't want it to be the end. He felt her presence as soon as she walked through the doors of the restaurant. He lifted his eyes from his phone as she approached, smiling, and he got up to say hello. It suddenly felt like the room had gone still and there was no one else, which was ridiculous. There were quite a number of people, though he had gotten a table far from prying eyes. How was your day? She asked him. Hectic with work. I had to put out a few fires, but it's over, thankfully. Yours? I am preparing the new collection, so practically every moment I am awake is spent thinking about it and working on it. But I love what I do, so it's not difficult to get lost in my work. My PA keeps reminding me to eat and is constantly bringing me a cup of tea or coffee. So, out of curiosity, why exactly did you allow yourself to get roped into this 5 date thing? Was I too much of a challenge? Your friends goaded you and you just could not help yourself? Gabrielle was looking right at him and he smiled and made a gesture with his hands, admitting that she was right. She smiled and shook her head. I was honest. Now it's your turn, he said. I believe you're seeing someone. So what's your motivation? Yes, Paul knows. I wouldn't be sitting down here if he didn't. It would feel very dishonest. I'll summarize. My father promised to tell me where my mother is buried, and there was no way I was going to let that opportunity slip past me, even if it meant suffering your company on 5 different occasions. She grinned at the last part, indicating that she was just joking. Few things surprised Alex, but her reason he had not expected, and he made a sign for her to elucidate. When I was 7, I came home from school one day, and my mother was gone. My father told me that she had felt unwell and so had been taken to a clinic. A week later, he told me that she'd died. At that age, I didn't even understand the meaning of death. All I can remember is everything happening rather quickly. Soon after, we moved to Lagos. As I grew older, I asked questions, but all I got were vague answers. I've asked him on countless occasions where she's buried. I need to go and see her, know where her remains are. But it seems my inquiries bothered and angered him. Until now. Finally, I got a bargaining chip. Me, Alex said. Yes. For some inexplicable reason, my single status now bothers him. He thinks you're a good candidate. It really is all the same to me, to be honest. This will end in 2 days' time, and I will finally get closure and move on with my life. Alex raised an eyebrow about the flippant way he was going to be discarded, but opted not to say anything about it. But surely your mother had relatives. Couldn't you ask them? Now you're an adult and don't need your father's permission to see them. I barely understood what was happening. I remember the feeling of missing her terribly and waiting for her to walk through the door for such a long time. But she never did. A few months after we arrived in Lagos, he sent me to live with his sister in Kaduna, who successfully avoided answering any of my questions. Afterwards, I was sent to a boarding school in London and wasn't allowed back every holiday. On one of those visits, I came home to find a strange woman in the house. She never left and has taken the place of the madame of the house. After that time, they sort of never requested my presence back home. I finished my university studies there as well, so I came back 3 years ago, and by then I had made my name as a designer and didn't find it difficult to establish myself here. But I had to know. It just feels like a vital part of me is missing. What's your relationship like now with your father and his wife? Alex asked. To the best of my knowledge, they're not married. I may be in the dark about that, though, as we're not a family that shares feelings or information. With my father, I try to build something, but it feels like my presence makes him uncomfortable, like he doesn't know what to do with me. His partner, Deborah, I can't say that she was ever unkind to me. I simply was invisible to her. She spent all her energy on my father and ignored me. I get the impression she was behind my being sent away and not being brought home for holidays and breaks. They have a daughter, Antonia, who's practically a stranger to me and seems to resent my presence for some reason. I just wanted to find my roots, feel like I have a family, but Sandra and Paul are the closest I have to that. Enough about me. I'm monopolizing the conversation. Tell me about yourself. I'm an only child, as you may have guessed from my inability to take no for an answer. A spoilt only child, Gabrielle added, and he chuckled at that. My father died 10 years ago, and I took over the running of the company. Things have gone well for me. I was even listed as one of the youngest entrepreneurs of the century. My mother, like your father, is very keen on my settling down and has not approved of any of my girlfriends. Well, maybe the first one, when I was 14. And out of curiosity, how many have there been since then? Gabrielle asked. A gentleman never tells. Alex hoped she would not insist, as no way would the truth paint him in a good light. So, you studied fashion design? He asked to change the subject. I studied architecture, but I found that I had a passion for designing shoes and bags, and so I simultaneously enrolled for studies in that field. I had some free time, especially during the holidays, and it was good for me to keep busy. I love researching and coming up with new ideas. For example, I'm currently working on a new bag line made solely from recycled material, and I'm really excited about that. I want to encourage sustainability. The look of sadness that had come over her when she had talked about her childhood was replaced by a spark in her eyes as she showed him photographs of the machinery that had just come in to process the materials she needed. Alex noticed that she tilted her head slightly when she laughed, and it hit him then that she would not see him again after the date she had felt forced to accept. He just did not fit into her life, and not for the first time since he had met her, he wished things were different. I'd love to see your workshop. Maybe that could be the fourth date? She asked with evident hope. It could be, if we go to the movies afterwards. Deal! Just one more after that, and then I will know. How about you accompanying me to the charity event my mother is hosting on Friday? And we call it even? She would love to meet you, and I probably need to be prevented from getting involved with the wrong female again. Oh, I don't know. I don't normally attend events. I like keeping to myself. I think I'd prefer writing you a check. What are the funds going to be used for? This year, our foundation wants to build libraries in various cities and employ tutors to give children extra lessons for free in the evenings. We can do it on our own, but my mother believes in involving people in the community. She says if not, all they will probably think of is making and spending money. Well, consider this. If you do come, we can finalize our association and it will be for a good cause. That's an excellent project, and I agree with your mother's philosophy. We need to get involved in our community and make a difference. Fine. I find the thought of ending this experiment of my father's and yours quite appealing. So I will attend and do my job to make sure I protect the young ladies from you. Don't look surprised. You're a dangerous person to fall for, and I have to look out for my kind. Can I bring Sandra, my friend? Of course you can. I'll add her to our table then. My friends will also be attending. Oh, I'm not sure we're there yet, meeting your friends and that. It seems like a big step to take. She teased good naturedly, probably relieved that it would all be over on Friday, Alex mused. I thought you might want to take this bag to the event. I designed it especially for you and can't think of a better opportunity for you to show it off. Sandra pecked up immediately when she heard those words. She loved Gabrielle's designs and owned a number of them. But having one made especially for her meant it was a unique piece. She had been promised one when her friend embarked on her journey as a designer 8 years earlier. And finally, it was hers. She gasped when it was taken out of its cover. From the Emerald collection. Yes, I've been working on it for some time now, and I wanted to surprise you. I hope you like it. I love it! Sandra screamed out the exclamations as she hugged it. It means a lot to me, especially because I feel like I have a piece of your mother. I wasn't able to get my hands on anything from that collection, and now I have my very own. This is going on all my social media platforms. Just wait and see how many people will trip and fall over with jealousy. Best gift ever. What shoes were you thinking of wearing? Gabrielle asked her friend innocently, as she handed her another bag with the brand's initials. The shriek Sandra emitted was probably heard in neighboring cities as she uncovered the matching sandals. They were so delicate, and the heels the perfect height, just the way she liked. She was about to comment on it when the grin on her friend's face made it clear that they had been made specifically for her and not just picked out from the store. She got up to hug her long and hard, tears in her eyes. They had come such a long way. Your birthday is coming up too, and I never know what to get you. So this is me killing two birds with one stone. Sandra was not listening as she had placed both her bag and sandals on Gabrielle's desk and was photographing them from every possible angle. My outfit doesn't matter. It will have to go with the shoes and bag. What are you wearing? This is like your presentation to society. So forget all about your usual nondescript clothes. It's about time the world put a face to Gabrielle Ibrahim. Oh, I hadn't given it much thought. Perhaps my dark blue. No, no, no. That's the one you've worn everywhere you've been invited and forced to go to lately. People are going to think you have only one dress. Come on, we're going shopping. But first, keep my sandals and bag in your safe. We can't take any chances. They will go directly from your safe to mine. Gabrielle laughed at the seriousness on Sandra's face as she picked up the items in question and stood in front of her safe, waiting for her to punch in the numbers and open it up. She looked at her mobile again. There was no new message. You look worried. Is everything okay? Yes. Paul seemed a bit upset yesterday when he asked me where Alexander and I had gone and what we had done. He said he was fine, but went rather quiet on the phone, and we ended the conversation soon after that. I can't wait for this to be over and for things to go back to normal. He'll come around. Going to watch a movie is something of a tradition when it comes to dates, so he might be feeling slightly insecure, especially as Alex is not your everyday competition. So between us, you can confess. I won't judge you. Are there really no feelings at all for him? No butterflies fluttering around your stomach when he looks at you? Has your opinion of him changed after 4 dates? I know what you want to hear, but I'm going to have to disappoint you. All I can think of is going to my father's house on Saturday. Alexander Jacobs, like I said, is the means to an end. To his credit, he's gone out of his way to make the dates interesting, and I have had fun. I can see why girls fall for him. He's free if you want me to introduce you to him, should you be open to it. I mean, you seem to think the world of him. Sandra shook her head and her friend patted her hand. She had not gone on a date since the death of her fiancé, and she was not sure she ever would. They arrived fashionably late at the event as Sandra had stated that it would be impolite to get there early. So there was that. And the fact that she had insisted on having a makeup artist come over and glam them up, as she had delicately put it. Gabrielle did not recognize herself in the mirror when she was all dressed up. It felt like she was an actress walking the red carpet. Sandra was looking spectacular too. She had to laugh watching her admire her sandals and bag in the mirror, over and over again. They walked into the hall of the hotel where the event was taking place, and she had to admit that her friend had been right. People were still arriving, and it was yet to start, even though they had made a late appearance. Gabrielle had still not grown accustomed to the phrase African time, which was used to plan every event, but no one seemed put out as it was the social norm. She looked around for Alex and spotted him talking to a group of 3 other men and 2 women, and they both approached them. There was a moment of silence when they caught up with them, and Gabrielle felt as though she was being observed and studied. This was broken by a tall and slender woman who walked forward and offered her hand. Gosh, Gabrielle Ibrahim, I can't believe I get to finally meet you. Nnamdi and I are huge fans of your work. Oh, I'm Ngozi, by the way, his wife. The woman pointed to a man standing next to Alex. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. George, fancy meeting you here. This indeed is a small world. Everyone, this is Sandra, a very good friend, practically family. She stared intently at George, and he made a short bow and raised his glass to her, as the rest of the group exchanged pleasantries, and Alex showed them to their table. You look breathtaking. Sorry, I just had to say that out loud, he said, as he sat next to her. You're allowed to compliment me today, because this look took a lot of effort to achieve. It reminded me why I don't do social outings. Too much work. This is a good turnout. Your mother must be very happy, she said, looking around appreciatively. She is, and has said that she wants to meet you, so you're not to make a quick exit at the end of the event. Your sacrifice was totally worth it. All eyes are on you. I suspect it was more the bother of having to think what to wear or sit through a tiresome makeup session. You would have drawn attention even if you turned up in sweatpants. Where do you know Judge from, by the way? Maybe you should ask him that, she replied, her attention drawn to the squeal Ngozi emitted as she held Sandra's bag. Gabrielle had to laugh because her friend was holding onto it as well, as if not trusting the other woman's intentions. This is simply a masterpiece. And the sandals. I thought you didn't do bespoke pieces. I don't. Sandra is an exception. I see. You must let me photograph them for my magazine. It feels like the missing link of the Emerald collection, which is gorgeous. I have a purse from that, and Nnamdi got a belt. It sold out immediately. Sandra is now the legal owner, so she decides where she wants her property to appear. She had not finished speaking yet. Her friend was already posing and proudly showing the items off. Shaking her head, she chuckled, her eyes meeting those of George, who was studying her. Gabrielle shifted her gaze to her surroundings. People were talking animatedly, and everyone was dressed very elegantly, so she was glad to have made the effort. Wearing a long flared and stone ankara skirt with a broad waistband and a black silk blouse, she blended perfectly with the ambience. Sandra had opted for a knee-length white dress, as she said that protocol had to be broken in favor of her sandals. They just had to be very visible. What's the use of taking them out of the safe if they're not going to be seen? She had asked with a grin on her face that she had been spotting since she had been giving her gifts. A woman went up to the stage and welcomed them, thanked them for their presence and solidarity, and then introduced their host for the evening, Mrs. Claire Jacobs. Gabrielle studied the small, plump woman as she gave a brief summary on the foundation and the projects they had embarked on, and for some reason took an instant liking to her. Soon, the silent auction started, and the guests moved around the various tables to place their bids on the items. I finally get to meet the famous Gabrielle Ibrahim, Mrs. Jacobs said. I assure you that the pleasure is all mine. I must congratulate you. The event was a huge success. I had a lovely time fighting with the gentleman. Every time I turned my back, there was a new bid, but I wore him down. Gabrielle smiled as she unrolled and displayed the huge cloth painting of an African village setting. That is lovely. It was donated by the artist. He painted it especially for the occasion. I wanted it to be big enough to almost cover an entire wall, and he spent months on it. I was afraid people would find it massive and not bid for it. Oh, it's perfect. I'm actually still decorating my house, and there are entire empty spaces everywhere that need things hung on them. As soon as I saw it, I knew it was what I wanted. I love, love, love your bags and shoes, and we're so proud of you and the way you represent our country outside its borders, said Mrs. Jacobs. You're just pure talent. The girl bowed her head in shy acknowledgement of the praise. Please, come over to the shop any time, and I'll be glad to give you a tour. Mrs. Jacobs clapped her hands in excitement and said she would definitely be taking her up on her offer. They talked for a short while, in between constant interruptions from people who required the attention of their host. Thank you for a delightful evening once again, said Gabrielle. I know that a lot of work goes into preparing something like this. Sadly, I have to take my leave now. The older woman held her two hands in hers and smiled. For a moment, it looked like she was about to say something, but changed her mind. Gabrielle spotted Alex talking to a woman and wondered if she was one of the ones she was supposed to help keep him away from. The truth was that she had gotten so involved in the bidding process that she had not paid him a lot of attention. She stood at a distance, not wanting to intrude, and he noticed her and excused himself from his companion. Thank you for inviting us. We had a wonderful evening, Gabrielle said. Sandra is somewhere still fighting for a pair of earrings. I have to go and rescue her before she mortgages her house and mine. It was nice getting a glimpse of the real you. Your mother is lovely. I wish you the very best, and I hope you find what you're looking for. She smiled knowingly in the direction of the girl waiting for him. He nodded, and she turned around and walked away. Gabrielle paced up and down in her father's study. She had barely slept the previous night. Stella, the housekeeper, had gone to get him, and the weight was killing her. It felt like she was about to open the door to something that would change the course of her life. She prayed silently to God that her father had not changed his mind and she had not gotten her hopes up for nothing. The sound of the door opening made her turn anxiously in that direction, and her father walked into the room. It was evident that he had just woken up. Good morning, father. How are you? Isn't it a bit early for a visit? You have the same look you used to as a child on Christmas morning when you'd see the presents under the tree and couldn't wait to open them. It's not early enough. I kept my part of the deal, and now I am a man of my word, and I will tell you everything I know. Sit down. You're going to wear down the carpet, and it's new. Gabrielle did as she was asked and started tapping her foot unconsciously on the carpet. A look from her father soon made her stop. So, I got a call from that young man. He said you had been charming and very good company. It almost felt like he was speaking of someone else. You said I was to be on my best behavior, and I took my commission seriously. Through narrowed eyes, her father observed her closely. So, if things turned out so well, why does he not want to see you again? That was never on the table, father. You said 5 dates, and I delivered. Could we please focus on the more important matter at hand? Andrew Ibrahim looked at her gravely for a moment, then got up and walked slowly towards his safe. He opened it, rummaged through some papers, and retrieved an envelope that he handed to her. Gabrielle looked at it, puzzled, and then at her father. I did not want to ever show you that, but you have insisted on knowing the truth. You're an adult now. I can't protect you if you don't let me. That is all I know about your mother's whereabouts. The envelope was aged, and with trembling fingers and a feeling of trepidation, She retrieved a worn-out note. July 13th, 1993. Dear Andrew, I have tried so many times to sit down and write you this letter, but somehow the words that came to my mind all felt incredibly inappropriate or insufficient because I know they will break your heart. The last thing I want to do is cause you pain, and I can picture you reading this and not understanding how this could have happened to us or how I could do such a thing. But you know I've always hated lies, so I feel that I can't go on living one. You see, I've fallen in love with someone in a way I never thought I could, and I have tried and tried to fight this, but I have lost the battle, and we have decided to go away together. When you get back, I won't be here, but I leave you with what I love most in the world because I can't bear to separate her from you too. I know that you will help her become the woman she is meant to be. You're a good man, and I wish you nothing but happiness. I want you to know that I have loved you very much. Vous ne savez pas à quel point je suis désolée. Votre Sophia. Gabrielle read the letter twice, not understanding anything. She raised her questioning eyes to her father, unable to speak or think clearly. I have no idea where your mother is, he told her. I came home and found this letter on my pillow, and I never heard from her again. I'm still trying to wrap my head around this letter and its contents, Gabrielle said, as she got up and started pacing up and down the room again, finally stopping right in front of her father. You've been lying to me for 27 years? Why? Why would you do that? All the times I asked you for details. How did you expect me to explain this letter to a 7-year-old? To tell her that her mother preferred running off with some man without even saying goodbye or taking her with her? But I haven't been 7 for 27 years. You've had so much time to tell me the truth. You let me mourn my mother while she was still alive. She might be still alive. How could you? How could you make such a decision for me? Don't speak to your father in that tone of voice, young lady. She turned around to find Deborah behind her. She had not heard the door opening or the woman walking in. This is a private conversation, was her reply, struggling to contain her anger and not wishing to engage with Deborah in any way. Everything that concerns this family concerns me. Your father was advised to tell you that. The poor man was beside himself. Not only did he have to deal with coming home and finding his wife gone, but he had his daughter to look out for. He couldn't think straight. By whom? Who was the brilliant mind that decided on that course of action? Gabrielle studied the faces of both of them furiously, and then it hit her. It was you, the abnegated secretary that looked out for her boss and always had his best interest at heart. You decided telling me my mother was dead was the best thing to do? Didn't you? She asked, daring her to answer. I did, and I stand by it. I would do it again if I had to. You had no right to do that. None of you had the right to hide such important information from me. What did you tell everyone else? Her family? Why has no one come to look for me in all these years? I showed the letter to her family, and I forbade them from seeing you. Shortly after, we moved to Lagos, her father replied, looking her squarely in the eye. She could be alive now, Gabrielle whispered, her anger letting the thoughts creep through, and she stopped pacing as realization set in. She could be alive and searching for me. How could you? All you did for years was send me away, from one school to the other. It was as if my presence disturbed you, irritated you even. But now I am thinking that maybe you just wanted to be sure nobody could find me, she accused, breathing hard, her head spinning as she tried to take in all that she had found out. Again, you can blame me for that, Deborah said. Your father had to start again, reinvent himself in another city, and it was difficult to do that and worry and care for a child. Wasn't that convenient for you? And isn't that the job of any parent? To worry and take care of a child? She asked the tall and slender older woman who was staring at her through her glasses. I beg your pardon? You heard me. Wasn't that what you really wanted? Me out of the way, so you could take the place you must have felt. After all, your sacrifices was owed to you. You completely ignored me the few holidays I was allowed home. And you... She turned to her father, who had sat down behind his huge desk. You let it all happen. You just allowed this woman to direct our lives and send me as far away from you as possible. But her daughter you kept. Her daughter you have watched grow. She had a father by her side when she most needed it. Did you know I was practically the only student during midterms that remained behind in the dorm? Did you even care? Then the rest I spent with your sister in London whenever she came to visit. The nuns in the boarding school you dumped me in, Sandra, her family, and Auntie Amina were the only people that have ever shown me any love. Your money paid for my education and upkeep, but those are the people you should be eternally grateful to. They made me the woman I am today. I don't want to say any more because I will regret it. For some reason, I seem to be the only one that has the ability to feel regret and empathy in this family. I'm going to look for my mother. After this unfortunate spectacle, I can take her telling me that she didn't want me to my face. After all, it will be just one more person saying that to me, either by actions or by words. I did not change your last name, and you have managed to build an empire. In this day and age, she could have found you if she really wanted to. You're a public figure, and so am I, her father replied, observing her, his anger a tool of defense that was evident in the tone of the words he uttered. There was so much she wanted to reply to that, but she chose to remember Father Ayo's advice of not speaking in anger, but waiting for a prudential time to pass. So, she counted to 10, and then another 10, before speaking. I am going to look for my mother. Please be kind enough to send me an email with all the contact details and addresses of her family, friends, and neighbors that we had in Benin City. Without looking at them, she turned around and walked out of the room, blindly reaching for the doorknob of the door leading to the exterior, as the tears were coming at a faster rate than she could dry them. To stay up to date with my latest episodes, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications.